Prakash, stay on. We want to get your take on Zee as well. But do listen into this conversation, then we'll get your thoughts in as well. Now, we all know the development from last week. The company, that's Zee Entertainment, had plans of raising funds, but those plans hit a roadblock after the special resolution to approve the issue of convertible warrants to promoters failed to get the requisite number of votes from the shareholders of the company. We have Hetal Dalal, President and CEO at Institutional Investor Advisory Services, as well as Karan, EVP of Elara Capital, who tracks the space, the sector and the company quite closely. Thanks both very much for joining in. Hetal, let me start with you because, a lot of the shareholder advisory firms, including, I think, IiAS, had anyway recommended that minority shareholders do not approve this resolution, which would have otherwise allowed the promoters to increase their stake from 4%. I think it would have gone up, well over 18% thereabouts. So what were the real issues? The company has cash. Is that why you didn't see the need for this sort of issue to promoters? And where does that leave Zee now?
Okay, so there were three reasons primarily because of which we recommended that minority shareholders not support the preferential warrants. One is, yes, the company is currently sitting on 2,400 crores of cash, and in raising another, and they've already done it, and they did a QIP last year, raising another 2,200 crores to a preferential warrants without a specific plan, which actually resulted in a 15% dilution, which is quite high, is something that we did not support. The second issue was just the nature of the instrument, right? If you look at warrants, 25% actually gets brought in upfront, and the remaining 75% comes in after an 18-month period. And essentially, promoters are the ultimate insiders. So by and large, we don't really favorably look at warrants to promoters, largely because it allows them to ride the stock price. The third issue is the promoters themselves, right? If you looked at last year's AGM, right, shareholders voted against the reappointment of Puneet Goenka on the board. The board is now board has protected Puneet Goenka in terms of still allowing him to run the company in a CEO position, not on the board. And to our mind, that is essentially disregarding the voice of shareholders. Given these three issues, we recommended that shareholders not support the preferential warrants, which is essentially what has happened.
Very sort of tightly put there, Hetal. Morning, Prashant here. Karan is also with us. Karan, as an analyst, how do you look at the development and what ahead for the stock?
Hi, good morning. So I think this is, slightly like a negative, for Zee in terms of share price performance. This was one of the first, positive corporate development that we saw in the last 2.5 years, since the Zee-Sony merger has been called on. This could have provided confidence in terms of increased stake, promoter stake for the company, and could have kind of held things differently. But now I think the focus moves on operational performance, business performance. 2-3 parameters to track here. One is the growth in the ZEE5 business, the kind of innovation they're doing on content. Second, on lower losses for ZEE5. ZEE5 losses have become half of what they were until about 8-10 quarters back. And overall operating margins have also seen a significant improvement in the last 4 to 5 quarters. But I think if you look at the situation here, had the promoter kind of wanted to increase the stake at a premium valuation rather than a current market price of 132 rupees, this may not have seen a rejection, because if you look at the investor perspective, they have entered the stock at 250 level, 250 plus on an average basis. So this will also kind of dilute the investor in terms of their stake, this kind of a large move by the promoter at these low valuations. So maybe they could have done a premium price over the CMP, which could have kind of held up on the investor confidence side.
Or maybe they should have just done a preference issue, and taken the shares up front instead of making the investors wait for those 18 months or thereabouts. Got that. Karan, what's the official rating on the stock that you have? And since it's pulled back a little bit, and since you highlighted some of those positives, do you think that it would be buy on dips?
So I think from a fundamental perspective, we have a buy rating on the stock with a target price of 200. 2-3 things to look here. One is the operational performance, as I said, in terms of both margins and lower losses of ZEE5. Second big thing to look here is the Zee Music business. So if you look at the Zee Music business, They do about 200-300 crores of revenue in terms of top line, and they make reasonable amount of profit margins as well. So if you look at other music labels today, which are listed like the likes of Saregama and Tips, they had a market cap of anywhere between 6 to 8,000 crores. So I think Zee Music also could have these kind of valuations. And if you kind of move away in terms of the Zee Music valuations separately, and if you put that aside, and if you put the 2,000 crores of cash aside, you are getting the broadcasting business at very low valuations, sub 5 times P. So I think, definitely it's a value stock to buy, but we'll have to see operational performance improvement on a consistent basis. 2-3 things more to track here is the SEBI issue, with the promoter, which is still an overhang. The issue with, Disney in terms of the ICC rights, which they had dishonored in terms of, showcasing the cricket contract, which they had done about a year ago. These are 2-3 things which needs to be tracked. Otherwise, apart from that, I think internally execution has to be strong, for share price momentum to pick up from here on.
Okay, well, not for the faint-hearted, given the outstanding issues that you described, Karan. But Hetal, to come back to you, I mean, the whole Zee saga for shareholders who've been invested, it's just been a real test of nerves and patience, right? From the whole Sony merger that it fell through, and then, the role of promoters. What do you see ahead? Do you think promoters with their 4% stake can still nurse the company back to health, look at some monetization, some assets like, Karan described, Z5, etc. What do you see ahead for the company?
I think there needs to be a structure fix as far as the governance structures are concerned. The board has clearly lost the confidence of investors. Not only have the promoters been voted out of the board, even the preferential warrants also has been defeated. It's time the board stepped down and you have a set of investors who bring in an independent board. I think this is a company which tends to show performance as a contradiction, as a solution to the governance issues, and I don't think that really works. For longevity of this company, I think there needs to be changes at a structural level, and therefore we believe a complete shift as far as the board is, a complete change of the board is really what is required.
And how can that be forced, Hetal? I mean, I don't know, because shareholders have spoken, minority shareholders, by turning down this warrant issue, like you're saying, by turning down Mr. Puneet Goenka's, appointment on the board. But what are the options for shareholders now? The board continues.
So there are several options, right? But that requires for shareholders to get together and ask for an EGM. The options are, of course, to ask for the removal of the board members and to appoint a set of independent directors who will run the company through. You've seen this in Fortis, you can see this in Zee as well. This was an opportunity that the shareholders had even when the Sony merger failed, and they still have it at this point in time to actually take that action. More importantly, it's the board also which needs to understand that they've lost the confidence of shareholders and therefore needs to step down. To say that 60% of the shareholders have voted for and therefore we're looking at the glass half full, well, I'm all for the glass being half full, but it can't result in cognitive dissonance.
All right. Thanks a lot, Hetal, as well as Karan, for joining in and giving us your view on Zee. We would like to chat with you, Karan, on your Swiggy report, which you put out late on Friday evening, but that for another time, an aggressive buy report with target price of 450. Thanks a lot for joining in.